We gone all voiceovery.
Yeah.
Fucking better wankers.
Yeah, should we go a bit more podcasty?
Okay.
Welcome to another episode of Behind the Billboard, the series that tells the stories behind some of the greatest billboards of all time.
Together on this podcast, we're going to discover the people, the processes, and the preposterous ideas that have made these billboards happen.
And we've chosen some of the best work with one very simple criteria in mind. It's got to have a story to tell.
Let's go.
Who we got coming in today?
John Patroulis.
John Patroulis.
Yeah, he's the big one.
I love John.
Yeah.
He was jury president at Cannes.
Will you recognise him without his swimming trunks on?
Or his sunglasses?
Sorry, yeah.
Actually, do you know what? We didn't actually see the sun that much that week.
2,980?
Ish.
Yeah.
But actually, one of the joyful things about looking through, on the first day, on the outdoor jury, you go through, it's all printed, it's all the print stuff, so it's all the billboards and posters. Because it's a billboard or a poster, you have to get it straight away. So it's, you're almost watching it like you're watching it out on the street. So you've got seconds.
That's probably an even
better. If it doesn't
better.
get you, then it shouldn't win anyway.
Yeah.
It shouldn't get shortlisted.
It's probably down to like 0.5 of a second instead of like 2.5 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the sun's outside and someone's waving a bottle of rosé through the window. But you always keep it professional, I know, Dan.
Yeah, always. Anyway, yeah, we spent kind of 14 to 16 hours a day in the bunker. No natural light. It's so you kind of come out at lunchtime and you're like,
and did you
blinded like a miner?
Did you and John you obviously got to know each other and thought, well, maybe he should come and get involved in this?
Yeah, we had a couple of beers. In fact, after it was the last night, so we decided who was going to win the Grand Prix, and we cracked. In fact, the organising guys brought in a bottle of champagne, and we kind of sat on the terrace, and he said, "So, what does your week look like?" And we were actually doing a TV interview the next day for the Cannes TV stuff.
Right.
And after that, we were like, well, so how's your week panning out? So I've got loads of people to meet. I've got all of the media guys were coming in as well, so we're going to meet them. We arranged to meet for a beer later on in the week to kind of see how the week's going and see what's up.
So it's nice to do it at the beginning, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about outdoor. It's done the week before, so you're in Cannes when there's no one there, and it's great actually. You can get together as a jury, and you have to spend a lot of time together, and you're really forced to get on really because you're spending all that time together.
Yeah.
And we were out for a beer at his favourite pizza joint, and I said, "Listen, me and Hugh are working on this podcast the other day. Would you like to come to London and record an episode?" He said, "Yeah." And full disclosure, he's not coming here specifically for this podcast. He's doing some work here as well, obviously.
And a bit of shopping, I think.
And a bit of shopping, yeah. So yeah, we're looking forward to him coming, and
it's going to be great.
Yeah, it should be good.
Nice one.
Welcome, John Patroulis, who doesn't need any introduction, so we'll go straight into it. No, we will give him some introduction. John is Global Chief Creative Officer at Grey. We worked together on the Cannes jury this year, which was great. He was the president. John has honed his creative skills at some of the best creative agencies around the world.
Thank you.
So perhaps we should start off there, and you can tell us a bit about your journey.
All right. Thanks, Dan. My journey. So I started in advertising. I'd come out of college. My journey actually started behind the bar. I came out of college and I bartended for many, many years. When I say many years, I mean many. And but was always interested in writing, and was doing a lot of writing short stories, writing plays, and things like that, just writing screenplays, and then found my way into advertising. My first job was I actually have a string of agencies that are no longer open, so
you've done your job.
Gray should watch out. But I started at a place called NWR. I literally put together a portfolio. I didn't know enough about advertising to know better. I put together a portfolio. I've told this story before, and I didn't know enough, so I just started looking up ad agencies in New York, and I saw there's this place called NWR. That's no longer open, and I saw that it was the oldest agency in America, and I was like, oh, this one must be good. And so I went there, got lucky, dropped my book off. They hired me and started there. I was there for a pretty short time. Went from there to Chiat Day in New York. Worked with some great people there. Jerry Graff was CD there. Right. John Hunt was a CD there, so I learned a lot from them. Went from there to Chiat in San Francisco. At the time, Chuck McBride was running it, who was terrific. And it was an amazing place and time. We had about 75 people, and our clients were Global Adidas, Fox Sports, and Stars.
Just
Network.
the small ones.
Yeah,
like
just
a-
the small
A
ones.
dream client.
It
list.
really was. And it's funny, like when I even look back at that time, just about every single person that worked there in that creative department are running agencies now. It's just like a great moment. I went from there to some of the guys that I had worked on Adidas with. We broke off and started an agency called T.A.G. with Xbox Global as our founding client. Did some had some success there and rolled that quickly into another agency called agencytwofifteen. Same crew, same clients. Started to grow that. It's now it's still there. That one's still around. It's in San Francisco. It's 215 McCann.
Why
now.
215?
God, man, I wish I had.
Please tell me it was
better
number
stories.
215 on the street.
That's exactly it. It's the honest truth. And if anyone that's started an agency knows, the name is literally the hardest part.
It is.
And we talked endlessly, and finally we're like, just call it the address and move
Oh,
on. It really
I
was
like
that.
that.
Yeah, it really was that.
I thought it was going to be like 2:15 a.m. in the morning when
No.
somebody finally said, let's do
No,
this.
it wasn't any deeper than that. That's a number on the street. And from there, so we started that, and that went great. And we had, again, Xbox came with us, and we started to grow that client list.
And it was acquired by McCann.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's kind of a long, ownership stories are
Yeah.
long, complicated, but yes, now it is 215 McCann, still doing great stuff. And Scott Duchamp running that. And then from there, BBH called, and I came back east to run the New York office.
And Hugh, that was
Yeah.
after you were there.
You probably don't know this, but I was at BBH London for about 10 years, but then I went to
right.
New York when it started, and it was so basic. It was like Hegarty was sort of unlocking a door and doing the paper and a photocopier.
Amazing.
And me and Adam, my partner at the time, were working there, and we did a kind of 3-month stint. And it was great, but it was so my main memory was playing darts a lot in this room where there was a sofa. And there was a guy called Nick Upton, he's at Lucky Generals now. He's a great guy, and he had sort of got us over there, and it was fun. I mean, the trouble was though, I just spent all day working with Adam, my partner.
Yeah.
Then they put us up in an apartment where I spent all evening with Adam
Yeah.
because we didn't know anyone in New York, and then we'd start work again the next day, and he'd be like, "Hey, how are you?" And go, "Yeah, I know, I saw you."
Still the same.
Yeah, but it was great, and
Amazing.
but it was nothing like what you guys did there was incredible. I think
Thank
John's
you.
obviously super proud of it, but your 6 years there is pretty mega. I was
Oh,
just
thank
looking
you.
at some of it.
Yeah, thanks. So that would have been, John, Cindy, was Emma there?
Cindy and Emma,
Yeah.
and I think. Yeah, they were just building, and it was really early, and it was quite twitchy at some point. Like, is
Yeah.
it going to work?
Yeah, I know. And John always loved New York. I think he had a great experience in his time living there.
Yeah.
It was never hard to get him to come. Yeah, hey man,
No,
will you
he
come out?
loved
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm there. Let's book some dinners.
Yeah.
Such a
Yeah.
good guy. He was obviously a massive part of the reason that I came. And so I did that for 5 or 6 years. And then Gray came calling. And so that's been a couple years there in this role.
And you enjoying the new role? Well, new role. It's 2 years?
2 years in, but a little over 2 years. Yeah, I am. It's great. I think it's a great time in the industry because there's so much change and chaos. That's kind of what drew me to it, was the coming to a large agency with creativity at its core and seeing what we can do to continue to drive and kind of lead where the industry is going from a big agency standpoint. I think the industry needs small agencies, mid-sized agencies, and large agencies. I'd never worked at one before. You can hear from that string. There's always pretty small to medium size, and the opportunity to work at scale has been great. And there's a lot of great people. So
I think we were talking just before you arrived that we've definitely seen a change in Gray over the last 2 years, and I'm sure you've been a massive part of that as well in terms of the creative work. So
thank you.
It's good stuff.
Thank you.
Today we're going to focus on out of home
Beautiful.
and billboards.
Yeah.
As goes the title of the podcast, we're trying to get behind the
idea.
billboards.
Yeah.
The stories and the people that you've worked with over the years, and we're going to talk about 3 of your favourite campaigns over the years. So,
Okay.
To start with, we are going to talk about Continental Airlines.
Yes.
So, do you want to give us a bit of background about it? And
this is so this was my first gig. This is literally my first job in advertising. And I had spent, as I had said, I kind of had spent a lot of time as a writer honing my voice and outside of advertising. And I landed at this agency, and they had Continental Airlines, and they were getting ready to launch. And I like to tell the story to young creatives about the importance of honing your craft so that you can hit the ground running, that whenever you have an idea, you can express it. You already have the tools to express what you want to express. Continental Airlines is a good one to talk about for this podcast because it was all outdoor. It was owning New York City. They're trying to break into the New York City market. And it wasn't easy because they flew out of Newark, which was hard for New Yorkers to think about that as one of their airports. Although it's a relatively convenient one. I'm not still trying to sell this. I haven't worked on a long time. But it's
immerse yourself in Newark Airport right now.
Yes, but it was because the idea of the campaign, it was work hard, fly right, and it was all about getting the basics right. So, when we talk about craft, which I'm sure is a big part of this podcast as well, I always like to define craft as perfectly expressing the idea, every element of a campaign expressing the idea. So I think sometimes people think of craft as it has to be designed within an inch of its life. I think it has to express what the core idea is. And this core idea was basic. And it was about not that you knew that the absolute basics were always done perfectly. So the campaign itself visually was quite basic. It was very simple, iconic color, and very simple language. It was all headlines.
Yeah.
And just looking back, I think because I had spent so much time writing, I was able to hit the ground, and I think I had billboards out in Manhattan. I think my first day, I wrote a sheet of headlines that all of a sudden were quickly up in Manhattan, which was very exciting as a young creative.
That's great.
And as you go through your process of the writing process, are you do you always think in billboards? Is that your starting point? Are you starting writing headlines and then you fill in the gaps, or are you, just for your process, or is the brief coming in saying we want to do some billboards?
In this, do you mean my general process or this particular?
In this particular.
In this particular one, I had been hired, and they already had the campaign. And they already knew what they wanted to accomplish. So I had in a way, it was a pretty easy brief for a young person. I didn't have to think too much. It was just, here's the idea, here's the kinds of things we need to write to, and you have 10 words. So good. Away you go. And it's great. And, I think creatives love.
Well, that's that Hegarty thing about, he used to say to us as young kids, out of restriction comes creativity.
Yes.
And I kind of now echo that to quite a lot of people I meet, and they go, we've only got like 10 seconds, and it's just like a pre-roll. I'm going, that's your restrictions.
That's exactly right. It's perfect.
But I'm interested to know, so if that was your first major campaign, Billboard campaign, did you go out and look at it and did it make you feel like, did it give you a load of confidence, to go on then?
It really did.
Yeah,
look, it's lucky. It's, I think so much of what we do, it can be you're at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
To land at a place that was immediately going to make something, and it was writer driven, and it was quick. Yeah. And when I say it was all over, it was outdoor in Manhattan, the whole plan, they almost didn't have any other media buy.
Oh, really?
So it was billboards, taxi tops, bus sides, broadsheet, you name it. You saw that blue and those headlines everywhere. And I have a great memory of the very first line that I sold, probably 3 weeks later, was up on the West Side Highway. And at the time I was living in Brooklyn, and the agency I was working at was up in Midtown. And, so I'm a young writer, I got no money, and they would pay if you stayed like past 8, they would pick up your cab home. Right. And I was often staying past 8, and I would have these nights where I would catch this cab home and go down the West Side Highway and see my line up there, and it gives you complete I think it's a great word. It just gives you confidence.
Yeah, it's
like,
amazing.
I can do this.
It's kind of a weird feeling. It's like if you're a writer and you see your byline in a paper or something. And I remember, just seeing your first bit of work up there. And if it wasn't too compromised or messed with, you'd go, yes, that's how I wanted it. And I think that's, it's interesting. I was just saying to Dan earlier just about America and the UK, how in America, if you do outdoor, if you do billboard, you do it really big.
Yeah.
You know, it's like everything in America is bigger in that respect. And when we're Brits looking at it, quite often I'd go, oh, God, have you seen the stuff in America? It's like, it's enormous. And the one I loved was, sorry, I'm going off track a bit here, but Time magazine did that one where it's the swinging front cover of Time magazine. And it's a presidential time.
Yes.
And I think it was either Reagan and Dukakis or someone. And all it would have been just like a little motor behind the thing. But it was just one of those ones you look at and go, oh, God, have you seen this American billboard? And it was like...
So cool.
I love the billboards here, and that's why we're doing this sort of kind of this series. But there's a lot in America just look at and go, wow, they just do special builds. We call them specials. I don't know what you used to call them over, but you know, when you bolt something on or...
Yes.
But
even the power, but even like just since we have a shared BBH background, I just saw the thing they just did for Burger King.
On the side of the bus.
Yeah, did you see that?
I saw it this morning on the way in.
Even just the simplicity and the power of context in the real world. I know Dan and I talked a lot when we were on the jury together about the power of outdoors. It makes it real.
Yeah.
It makes it real. It's in the world.
Yeah,
it's real.
And you can share it in a way where you grab it and you go, right, I'm going to send that. Rather than something that starts in a kind of shareable medium and go, yeah, I imagine it's been shared millions of times. It's like on a small device in my hand. That's in the real world, and it happened.
And that power of context, the power of a moment in time, the fact that people are out there looking at it. We're talking about, we've got elections coming in 2020, big election in the US as well.
Yeah.
In fact, that's a good point. Are there any brands that you work with that would use the power of context and would be interested in using the power of context with the political climate that we've currently got in the US?
I think we do. It's a tricky, as you can imagine, it's a tricky thing to navigate.
Really?
I think the power of context is a big part of the power of outdoor, of really understanding the world in the context that it sits in. And it's one of the things at Gray that we look at whenever we're looking at outdoors. Are we taking advantage of that? I think it's important.
Okay.
You're doing your best to take advantage of it. Because even that BBH one, obviously they made sure that there was an image of it parked in front of
Westminster.
So
I think if you get those right, it's just so wonderful to be. If you, as a punter, you just walk past and go, they've got their finger on the zeitgeist.
That's exactly.
And then I think it obviously reflects brilliantly on the brand. But then you go, who does that stuff? You know, and you go, oh, it's this place called Gray or BBH or whatever, and you're going, oh, I'd like to work there. You know, and I, as a creative, the worst one is where you see something running the day after the event is over. Yeah. And it's, you know, it's the worst one is when it's the day after the event and you're just going, oh, God, you've got to take that down.
Yeah, that's
now
right. You already missed it. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Just going back to what you're talking about, seeing it for the first time. One of my pinch me moments in my career was seeing my work up in Times Square. That was always, you know, going through art school and working here and building the agency up. When I first saw my stuff up in Times Square, that was the pinch me moment. It's like, wow, that's the thing I'd always, not knowingly, but that's the thing I always wanted, seeing my stuff up. And Times Square was always the pinnacle of that. Yeah. We are 100 meters away from probably the most iconic site in Europe, Piccadilly Circus.
Yeah, right.
And so seeing your work up in locations like that has always been the thing for young creatives to aspire to. So taking a taxi home from the agency and seeing your work up is, even when you're working late into the evening, there's that moment of, okay, I'm doing okay, my work's up, and
that's right.
Millions of people are seeing it.
That's exactly right. I think, and you're hitting on. So you just hit the two, Times Square, Piccadilly Circus. They're almost you know that when your work is showing up there, it's making massive impact. And almost to the point when you're presenting ideas, you're always reluctant to say, that at Piccadilly Circus, because it's like, you're not really going to probably get that space. But it is, you understand the power of it and that people are going to see it. And also it does become, if you do it right, a shareable image. Yeah,
I was thinking, sorry, keep going off P slightly, but I love the purity of outdoor and the billboards. I'm sure, you know, you say if you can put on a poster, correct. We got a campaign. And it's that, like say, boiling it down to 3 words, or subverting that and using 25 because The Economist did that once, or building something on it, or right now where we interact with posters on phones and stuff. It's still the place where you can kind of walk past with it, always show it on your phone and say to your mate, hey, I did this.
Yes.
So if you're showing him a TV ad, you've got to press play, and it's got to play
Yeah.
for probably about 30 seconds minimum. And then same with a radio spot. Someone did it. You just show them the poster and go, I did that.
Yes.
And I think that's the moment when you go, yeah, it is so pure.
Well, it goes back to the writing thing that you touched on earlier on, John. Is that the you can write a 4 or 5 word headline for a billboard, and it can be picked up instantly. You know, people can understand it because the context of how people immerse themselves in outdoors, when they're driving past, walking past, they're on the subway, they're doing something else. So the ability to read a headline and understand it and take it in, it has to be quick. So going back to your Continental Airlines, tell us the headline and tell us how it came about.
So I'm not saying this is the best headline in the world, but it's the first one I did. It was they wanted to talk about the fact that they that they covered a lot of Europe. And I think the headline was, we have more of Europe than Caesar did. Yeah.
We like that.
Yeah.
still working now.
Yeah, that's right. It's not,
Got a
yeah,
chuckle.
still makes sense. And again, it was that classic, this is what we need to say.
So did you get Caesar's permission to use his name on the
Yeah,
poster?
luckily, wait, what is it? Yeah, there'd been enough time. Yeah, we didn't have to
Okay.
get the
Just
rights.
There weren't
His
second
family isn't
choices.
getting residuals. The Caesars in Italy or whatever aren't getting.
And there weren't any other choices other than Caesar, you thought?
No, that was it.
Okay, good.
That was, no. I tried to stay out of it. And again, just the simplicity. Obviously, there was absolute clarity. You knew what it was saying. It had a little bit of personality, so it said something about the airline. But even in the sense of simplicity and clarity was part of the idea.
Yeah, it's
that we're
good.
not doing anything more than that. I want to touch on something you were saying because it just hit me. As you're saying the power and the simplicity of outdoor, I think another thing is that it's how scarcity is value. Anything that's social, the internet is just full and it's limitless. Outdoor, it is scarce. You are saying there's value because there's only so much outdoor space, and
nice way of putting
it gives it an heightened value that even the audience understands. There's a little bit more importance.
Yeah, we decided to buy this space to tell you this message.
Yes.
It's interesting because sometimes don't know if you have this in the States, but in Britain, if there's like a political poster going up, sometimes they'll have the politician there and they'll open it. And it's like, ta-da.
Yeah, the ribbon cutting. of
Yeah,
the
but
poster.
it's sounded a little bit crap.
No,
But-
we don't have that over there, but okay.
No, I'm sure you wouldn't. But it's like,
Trump will just tweet it.
Yeah.
it's the kind of thing Bill Hicks would just take the piss out of us Brits
Yes.
for. But it's sort of like, if you have bothered to buy a space, and some people say, oh, you got to get down. So like, if you wanted to see a poster that only been bought in Piccadilly Circus and you want to get your shot, you're going to have to come down and get it.
Yes.
It's a bit like the fourth plinth. You know, if you want to get that shot off the fourth plinth, or you want to see, I don't know, this stunt that Lucasade have done, the great thing. I love that when they built the climatic conditions for Brazil in Britain. I was talking about this yesterday to a client, going, it's such a clever idea. So they couldn't sponsor the World Cup over in Brazil, Lucasade. So what they did is they sort of brought a bit of Brazil to England to create the same heat
Beautiful.
in the
Yeah, it's
sports
great.
pitch, and then they got guys to come in and play. It was so clever. I was sitting there going, it's great. But it was only one of them, and you had to go down.
Yeah.
You know, and you're right. It's like, we've decided to do this. So,
Yeah,
and
so
you
those
talk about
special
that a lot.
builds, I think that's probably a nice segue into your second choice of out of home. Actually, the simplicity of your line from the first one we talked about, Continental, and how you evolved as a writer into your second choice, which was for skincancer.org.
It was. I had worked for. It actually came from personal. I had some little bit of skin cancer, and so it became something I was aware of and wanted to make other people aware of. And I was working with this is when I was at Shite in New York, and I was working with the skin cancer organization. And I'll tell you the idea, but it was the first time was trying to take advantage of how people experience out of home, understanding context, and move beyond just a passive experience or a singular experience. And I'll tell you how the idea was quite simple. It was an outdoor billboard that had a picture of a kind of a happy family on a beach, beautiful sunny day, and it just had the headline, "Never underestimate the power of the sun." And then over the course of the summer, the billboard crinkled, faded, cracked from the sun, but the headline never did. So the imagery did, but the headline stayed the same. Wow. And it was, again, very simple idea. The power of it was the execution that made it special.
Yeah.
I love it. It's brilliant.
Thanks.
Could you tell us a little bit more, like, as in, so it's a great concept, but then how did you sell it? And did you know that you had a media guy who's going to make sure the paper's right? And did you?
It was not easy. I'll tell you the truth, because as you can imagine, everything is created to not fade and crinkle.
Yeah.
Hey,
that isn't the goal.
Yeah, I've got an idea. Let's not do what you want.
Exactly. And to find, so what we actually had to do, create it special just for this bill, because every ink is created to not fade. And again, simplicity of idea, it actually wasn't that hard to sell.
Okay.
So that, because I was able to explain to you in about a sentence, and your client can understand it. We did know that PR was going to play a role in this, because we posted it at beaches, so that at places we knew that people were frequenting all summer, so they would experience the fading.
Right.
But obviously the PR story around it of a billboard that does that, and being able to capture that time lapse was a big part of it as well.
And also, I didn't know it was a personal thing as well, so that's incredible. Very, very brave of you to do that. Yeah, I love the sound of that. It's hopefully we can source it.
Yeah.
and have it on the site. But it's we talked a bit about technique, and we're talking about where posters have gone from being flat, just wonderful headline writing, to coming a little bit off the poster, sticking stuff on, messing with the paper, and how the evolution, and with every beat, there's different incarnations of them. I remember I was talking to Dan just before he came in about I think it's Greenpeace, and at Saatchi's they did they filled the poster with litmus paper, and when it rained is when acid rain was like the big kind of, oh my god, and it said if this poster is turned purple or something, you'll know there's acid in the rain. But that again, that is such a simple thing. Like you said, actually, all you did was try to reverse the process of retaining the inks. And yet, when you see it as a creative, you're going, oh my God, that's so clever. Oh, it's so brilliant. And actually, quite often, it's just a really simple bit of tech or science, which you have used.
Yes.
And I suppose my joy for outdoor and billboard is when those two come together. Dan just had a great expression, tech for creative's sake, which I think is a really, that all the gear, no idea. I just hate stuff where you look at them, someone goes, hey, have you seen this incredible outdoor campaign? And I go, no, show me, what is it? And it'll be all kind of stuff which isn't creative but uses tech. And I'm going, yeah, but I'm just not
Where's
engaged.
the idea?
Yeah, and I'm sure it is good, but the time when someone goes, this is the first time someone has used printing. Someone used a motion triggering device. We were talking earlier about tomorrow we've got Paul Belford coming in talking about the Economist poster where the light bulb lights up when the guy walks past.
Oh, that's really good.
And again, we were thinking all it is literally a motion sensor. But then to the public, people go, oh my God, how did that happen? So
but because of the idea. They get excited by the idea. The tech is
Could you
expression.
Sorry, just bring it back on that. So tech could be technique, and what we're talking about here with the sun, it's two things that we've already mentioned. It's the context where it is. It's on the beach. It's in direct sunlight.
Correct.
So there's context around location and real-time conditions, and it's also the technique that you use to help tell that story.
Yes.
Without the technique and without the context, it wouldn't have worked. And obviously, it's perfect for the space and the medium.
Did you get your associated kind of PR hit from it?
We did.
Yeah,
we did. I mean, this was. I'm embarrassed to say how long ago this might have been.
No, that's the point.
That's
if it was too recent, we'll go, it's been done before.
And I think it was, even a little, I was still finding my way, and I think we're still finding our way in understanding the power of PR around the idea itself. But it kind of forced it. The idea forced it. I think we're going to have to figure out the PR story because it's a time story, which isn't always such an immediate one. And it worked. It did. People talked about it, and it got some attention.
Did you make the classic, which, and I read, sorry, because I know you were both at Cannes last year. I've got this lovely picture. The listener can't see it, but John and Dan are in their nice shorts with sunglasses on, not like this cold winter's day here. But I think Dan told me you watched something close to 3,000 entries.
Yeah, we looked at
And
a lot
I
of stuff.
imagine a big amount of those were films. Yeah,
There's a lot of case studies.
Yeah, there's
Case
a lot of
studies.
case studies.
So-
In fact, it's split into. We're going to do a section.
yeah, but I was just going to
another
ask
time.
about the when you did your son the skin cancer. Did you make a film of it?
No,
it wasn't
this
even.
was
it like
well before
Right,
the
okay.
case study culture.
Well,
Yeah.
Case study culture, great experience.
Yeah.
So before social as well, presumably, because
Yes.
it's that long ago. But
Exactly.
So we talk about. We're going to move into one of the highly PRable campaigns shortly.
Great. Can I just
Yeah,
mention as we're talking about, I think one of the first when I did that, I was inspired by something that had happened in the agency. It was the first time I had experienced what was possible. I'm just remembering this right now. We had Absolute at the time. It was kind of the famous Absolute Blank campaign.
Brilliant.
And someone in the agency, I hadn't done it, but did a billboard in Times Square. There was Absolute New York. It was in the shape of the bottle, but it was an apartment, an actual built-out apartment.
I've seen it. Yeah, it's
It
great.
was literally about the size of most New York apartments.
Wow.
And it was so simple and so powerful. And there's nothing to it. They just made it an apartment, but anyone in New York that walked by it loved it, and it was famous. And that inspired, I think, a lot of people. It's like, oh, we can do more than just write a headline or have an image. We can play with it.
And has that happened a lot at the agencies that you've been at, where you've seen work elsewhere, other teams,
yes.
and you go, wow, that's inspired.
It just
me to do
opens up
this."
possibility.
But you know what? I
That's
bet. I bet it wasn't that easy. You go,
Of course.
Like every poster, I was trying to explain this to someone at work the other day. Like the thing you look at, and you, God, it looks great working on this campaign. Like all the brilliant awards you win, and the loads of PR, and you're going, there's a team behind the pain, and that whole
It
thing
almost
about
died making it.
Oh, they just made a building out of an Absolute bottle. That looked like easy.
The guy,
Yeah, that's right.
guy who has to go and stand at the spot and track the sun for the day and work out.
Yeah, that's
how
right.
much- yeah, that's the pain. There's,
Yeah, you always have that. I will say that as a creative, I always loved that feeling of maybe like the day you show up, first day on set of a production, and you're walking and you have, if you're lucky enough to be doing a giant production, there's like blocks of trucks and people, and you're like, oh my God, remember like a few weeks ago, we were just in a room like, hey, this would be cool. And then cut to millions being spent. Yeah.
Well, funny enough, I bet that you're going to bring it to Halo and talk about that a bit.
Yeah, actually, it's a good segue. And we talked about the PRable aspects of campaigns, and obviously the thing we're moving on to now is a massive integrated campaign, as they're now referred to. Big in PR, obviously, it was good for awards for you, but outdoors got a big section of the concept. So this was the Halo 3 launch that we're going to move on to. Tell us a bit about the brief first of all, and how that came to you from the client.
So at the time they were getting ready to launch. So Halo was a big title for Xbox, and at the time, Xbox was really, got to remember, Xbox was behind PlayStation at the time, and were really trying to build their reputation. Titles was a big part of it. First party titles. If you love this title, you're going to have to also buy the platform. And Halo was their biggest title and kind of their biggest cultural title that they knew that they could drive sales with. So literally the goal in the brief was do the biggest launch in history. You know how you like that brief?
No pressure.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea, again, simplicity of idea, I don't know that this would feel as original today, but at the time, no one had done it, was, the whole story of Halo is that the Master Chief is the savior of mankind. And so we decided to validate the gamer's experience by treating the Master Chief as a genuine hero. And we created a campaign, a future history, because it was because the story takes place in the future, where we honor the hero that saved humankind. And once we had that simple idea, it's like, well, how do you do it? You build dioramas, that you might have museums, you do exhibits, you have plaques marking places in the world where certain events happen. It just, when you have that kind of simple idea, you get to just express it out, and that's what we did.
When you said, it's annoyingly how easy you said, future history. That's the idea.
Yeah, future history.
And I'm like, and then we just make museums and things. But it is the beauty. It's beautiful, that just 2 words, future history. And I remember seeing it, and this is something I wanted to ask you, like, about everyone who works on products. Were you or are you a gamer? And do you think that's important for you to understand how it works and then do an incredible campaign, or is it better not to know? In your case, what was the story?
I was not a gamer, but I was someone. I will say, when I think about that campaign, we had creative teams who were deeply immersed in gaming, so really, really passionate and understanding.
And did you get them on purpose onto it too?
They were. Yeah, I think it becomes a natural thing. They're drawn to it, and you're drawn to them. We had a lot of very talented people on it, but gaming was at the center of it. I think my past like I had said, I'd been writing little 1-act plays and had been writing screenplays, so I was very, very interested in narratives and story structure. And I think it was a combination of many things. My partner, Scott Duchamp, really understood gaming, and so it was all of our coming together and helping bring that to life. And I think it all depends. I think you have to have at least some people in the team that have a deep, deep understanding of the culture and a passion for it. I think it's valuable sometimes to also have people on that team that aren't bringing that, but are bringing a different skill set.
Yeah, because what I loved about it, I remember at the time being really angry because it was so good and very jealous. Because prior to that, and I'm not a gamer at all, but I love ads and communications and stuff. And I remember thinking, well, I don't know if you obviously did this, but up until that moment, it's always crash, bang, wallop, fast stuff, rock track. And I was just reading up, and it was like everything you did wasn't that. Yes. It was like, so imagine going, okay, so this crazy, brilliant, most immersive thing you can do, we're just going to have little stick men. Yes. I mean, imagine saying that to a client. Ace, and then a classical soundtrack. Yeah. I mean, just everything.
Selling that idea of, so we're not going to show the game. We're not,
at the end, maybe.
So let's talk about the pitch. Let's talk about the pitch to the client. Yeah. You talked about your work writing 1-act plays and kind of the cinematic experience and how you would explain what's happening in an idea. Let's talk about the pitch to client. For some of the younger creatives who just basically got into advertising for watching Mad Men, is that your style? Is it the Don Draper immerse them in the story, or is it
I think it depends. It honestly depends on the idea, the client, and what's the best way to do it. Always start with simplicity of idea. We're going to honor in this one, we're going to honor the Master Chief as a true hero, which is going to, and again, to make the cultural play, validates gamers' experience because that is literally their true experience and is validating that as a true experience. And then will also make sense to broader culture, which was the goal. And then go from there. Okay, if we're all nodding there, it just gives you a lot of creative freedom. Then, okay, if we're agreeing to that, then this makes sense, and this makes sense, and this makes sense. And then I do think when you come to the executions, you have to build the rules around it. I'll tell you, the decision to physically make the diorama, which was a very expensive, elaborate process. It could have been easier to do it in CG. But we knew, again, when we talk about making it real, making it physical, the power of that, and then building the rules around it. Being on set, we had Rupert Sanders was the director for that.
Can I quickly ask him the diorama?
Of course.
Do you know the Chapman brothers had done this diorama called Hell? And it was these massive boxes, and it was from, I think it was loosely from World War II, and it was horrific. And I remember, I can't remember what came first.
I think we came first.
Yeah, no,
pretty sure. Pretty sure they ripped us off.
I know those artists took it off it. No, but I just remember seeing that and thinking it's such a clever way to do it.
And it makes it, to build, does that great thing of, this is something we're familiar with, and you just subvert one thing. Okay, I'm familiar with dioramas. I'm even familiar with
the
war
Smithsonian
scenes.
has,
Of course. But wait a minute, that is a character from a video game made real. And then we had to build, so I will even, and we talk about future history, it's fine, I haven't talked about this campaign in a long time. The endless discussions around the rules about what does it mean, what is a future history, and what are the rules around that. So for example, the diorama, in the future, maybe dioramas would have movement and action and things. And we made the very clear decision that is not what a diorama is. We're not going to allow there to be holograms and things. It is literally has to be grounded by the rules of gravity and physical reality. I think that made a huge difference, that choice, because we wavered. We weren't sure. Should we be? And we made the decision of, we're going to ground it in what people experience today, and we're just going to be telling those stories from the future. And I think, and it allowed, even when we did the veterans videos where they were each telling their individual experiences, it literally allowed those to be simple. Like one of those, we were shooting the diorama, we just ran outside, put a guy in a Nero collar and had him tell a story. And it was good because it was so grounded in what the idea was, it became powerful.
Yeah, you knew your world.
Yes, that's exactly right.
So you started to talk about you had the director and you had the idea for the kind of hugely cinematic piece for the TV, which is great, and we'll post a clip of it onto the description of the podcast. I'd like to get onto the outdoor element. So so let's talk about how you obviously had a great creative hook. Let's talk about how some of those outdoor elements came together.
So one was by creating the physical diorama. We had a physical piece that could tour. That we, after the filming, were able to break it. And this thing was giant, by the way. It was massive. And we were able to break it into 3 or 4 elements that then could tour around so people could look at and experience. So that became a powerful thing that helped ground it. We created plaques that we put up on buildings.
Memorial plaques.
That's exactly it. That would mark at this place on this date, the Master Chief did this thing, which again creates reality, and you get an image of that starts to become spreadable.
And was the idea to use non-traditional media, because those are 2 great bits of outdoor, as in they're outdoory bits, but did you also have to couple it up with big maybe more old schooly type posters, or did you say no, we're doing everything non-traditional type?
We were fortunate that we did the goal wasn't to do it non-traditionally. The goal was to bring the idea to life in the purest way. And as long as we could say, this makes sense for that. So I'll give an example of a tricky one. There was they had already bought some media for I think they had sponsored a music event, and they had bought some media for the program. Right. We're like, oh man, what are we gonna do? But when you have a simple idea, we ended up creating a ad that was for an upcoming symphony honoring the war hero. So nice. You just start bringing it around. We created. You just start going, how do you honor a hero? We ended up making stamps, which had his image on it. Which again, the great story behind that was we had the idea. We started going through the complicated process and everything. And finally,
I think to the mail service.
Exactly. And then I think one of us finally there's actually a service online where it'll cost us $40. Just they'll put any image on a stamp. And then we were able to just do a bunch of them. And then we put those on mailers and went to what we would call today influencers. And, it just put things in the world physically that is any way that you honor a hero, we try to do that. The London office of McCann took images from the film itself, the film we made of the diorama, which was just a fly-through of the diorama with music, and turned that into a photo exhibit honoring. That was, honoring. That was from a war photographer. Exactly.
Museum shot, yeah. And I remember it. It was one of the first campaigns that I saw that used the IMAX cinema in London as well. They'd wrapped around the whole of the cinema in central London, and so. It was the IMAX cinema was relatively new then as well. So you look up, and it was completely wrapped in the Halo logo, and it was using one of the photos from the diorama. So
yes,
the incredible piece, and obviously hugely iconic for the London space as well.
Yeah, and it really happily it really worked. It really worked because it tapped into simple, understandable narratives. You did not have to be a gaming fan if you were a fan of just entertainment. And it's why it ended up at the time, most successful launch in entertainment history, which I don't think we could claim anymore, but at the time it did. And I think it was because of that, tapped into just some universal themes that everybody could understand.
But it's probably also, I see it was one of the most creative launches I've ever seen. And I'm not a gamer, as I said, but I remember just sitting and thinking, it's just literally every touch point, it's, and I think now a lot of people use that approach, you know, and you think, well, you were the one who started off. So it's just, it's pretty inspiring stuff.
And it was an awarded piece of work as well. It did very well.
It did very well. Yeah, thanks.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Should we make an extra long page on the website for how many? I mean, it was amazing, but justifiably so.
Do you think it's I know the outdoor element was multifaceted, but I think it's your most famous piece of outdoor?
I would say yes. Yes, I would say yes, and also because using something we talked about earlier, the outdoor really helped make it real. We're trying to say this is a true hero, and you had to have physical things in the world to market. You couldn't just have communications materials saying it. It had to exist. And we can't say someone's a hero. And then what started to happen, of course, is other people started to do things. Like people did start to take over statues and turn them into Master Chief statues and things. Yeah. So then the world started doing some of our work for us.
It's a fine line between creating a statue and doing a press release about, hey, look what these guys have done, to actually putting it there overnight and not saying anything. It's quite interesting, isn't it? What people will now buy and what they won't.
Well, and also I will say, when you're working with passion brands like Xbox and Halo, which is a title that people are deeply immersed in, you're fortunate because people will they're dying to seek it out, interact with it. That's not true of every product, that people are dying to interact with things. But this is something this is actually, it becomes part of the lore and part of the narrative. There is a Halopedia that captures all of the stories. There are Halo novels. Really? There's the whole world.
It's a whole fan culture for it, right?
There really is. And these marketing, the things that you create become part of it. They consider it as true to the narrative as the games themselves. They just incorporate all of it. So you have to be very careful and
respectful to the story 100%. That's gone before. Yeah,
100%.
Incredible. We're coming to a close. I want to ask you. In fact, I was going to say we will post. We managed to track down the promo that was the entry for the cool. Titanium entry.
Yeah, great.
There's a very familiar voice on that entry.
Yeah.
Have you thought about a career in voiceovers as well as writing?
Yeah, man. Hook me up.
Maybe you could do the intro for this podcast. Yeah. sound a lot better than me and Dan.
Yeah, just talk to my agent. We'll be fine. Yeah. Work something out.
I want to end up on some tips for our listeners who are interested in the outdoor space. We assume that we have listeners from across creative and media owners and anyone who's interested in the outdoor space as a creative or as a media-driven medium. Tips for great outdoor. What's your belief? What are you telling your teams and your offices about how to get the best out of outdoor advertising?
I'll run through a few. Simplicity. We know that outdoor, which is what's beautiful, has to have a clear idea that is very simply expressed. You can't expect people to spend time with it. You need it to land very quickly. Every idea that that I think that we mentioned so far, people would experience immediately and understand what it is and can have a visceral experience. So I think that idea at its center, simply expressed. The craft of it, again, that helps the simplicity of the experience when we talk about making sure that the way it is expressed and crafted reflects the idea itself. Again, I just want to emphasize that could be an example I often use for that is punk rock flyers from the 80s. They were cheaply, roughly done, but that was the spirit of the DIY experience. It was meant to be messy and irreverent. And then when you talk about the context, they were put anywhere. They're put up on telephone poles and plastered to walls because that was also the spirit. We weren't going to follow rules of media buys. We're going to just put it where we want to put
guerrilla.
it. That's exactly right.
Yeah, the tone of voice is appropriate to the brand.
Exactly. And then I think understanding context, that where it exists can be part of the idea. Great Outdoor takes advantage of the context itself. And then I think the last one, this is one that we talked about a lot on the jury together this year, is I think Great Outdoor elevates the experience. You have to remember, no one's inviting you in.
Yeah.
No one's saying like, all right, I'll go through this so that I can get this programming. This is public space. This is not ours.
It's not skippable. It's not.
That's right. And so we have to contribute something. And maybe that's just a little bit of wit, or a little bit of entertainment, or a piece of utility, or a bit of beauty, but you have to elevate, or else you're detracting from the environment, and that's bad for everyone, not just the brands, it's bad for humanity. Yeah. So just keeping that in mind, I think when you elevate, people can enjoy any piece of beauty or entertainment. So having that in mind as well. No one's invited you in. You have to behave that way.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we also talked about that responsibility we have in the advertising world to being in that public space as well. Yes. Because because we're not invited in, we have people who are walking past children. There's lots of rules about advertising around near schools.
Yes.
On the underground and subway here. High fat and sugar, salt content stuff is not allowed to be advertised. So there is that responsibility that we all have for the brands that we work with in the advertising world.
Although you still want to subvert,
but
that's right. In the right way.
In the right way. That's right.
Yeah, but well, it's been a pleasure talking to you,
thank
John.
you. Yeah, for me
I've
as
really
well.
enjoyed it. I wish we could do more, but
we could literally talk billboards and creativity all day.
Yeah.
Hugh's got to go to a BPM
pre-production meeting.
And John's got shopping to do while he's here in London,
right.
amongst other things, I'm sure. So
but thanks so much.
It's been
for coming
fantastic.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
It's been really
Great.
good. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
It was great to have John on, wasn't it? He's a real character.
He was good. He was super charming, wonderful. Hopefully all of our guests are going to be like John.
I can see him at the end of the bar as he was kind of the aspiring creative, writing his one-act plays.
Yeah, like
one day I'll make it. I'll make a
spinning
billboard.
bottles like Tom Cruise.
Yeah, it's good.
No, he was brilliant. And I thought from not having met him before, by the end I was just intrigued by everything he's done, and it's just and the thing you pointed out about Halo, where he was the voiceover as well. I love that dedication to the cause.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting with the 215, the agency they set up as friends, right? So he's a founder, and they grew that baby. They managed to take some clients with them. They truly believed in them, and they backed them all the way. And so for that stuff to happen, and be so awarded for the work, in outdoor, is a massive feather in the cap. And he talked about his career trajectory and some of the people that he worked with, and now they're all out running agencies. You can see what a golden era that really was for creative work.
Yeah, it's good to have hopefully throughout the series we'll have people from all different walks of our community, and I think he gives a nice big global overview because you sat with him in the McCann jury, and I think we need that. I think we need to hear from different markets, what's going on, and I think it was really intriguing just to hearing what he was saying. Yeah,
I talked to him privately while we were in Cannes as well, just about the process of being a global CCO, and he said, it was a difficult role for him to take, and he won't mind me saying, he reached out to his peers to say, what's the best way to deal with this stuff, and it's really interesting to hear how one person's creativity and having to kind of drive a whole business forward with their creative methods and process. How that can be a real challenge, and I think he's handling it really well. And I think the product that we're seeing from Gray over the last couple of years is testament to that.
Well, he wasn't drinking alcohol in the day, so that was a good one.
What during the record?
Yeah.
In fairness, it was 10 a.m.
Yeah, that's just me and you. So we're going to put his stuff up on the website?
Yeah, the stuff will all be in the description of the podcast. So make sure you click through the links and have a look at the stuff we're talking about. We are aware this is an audio medium, but you should see the stuff that we're talking about because it really is impressive.
So it's getbehindthebillboard.com is where our stuff is. And then on Twitter, please follow us at GetBTB.
And on Instagram, you can go to @GetBehindTheBillboard.
And now we're going to get off and see you next time.